Good morning and welcome to another edition of 15 Minutes of Flame. Hey, what's happening? It's Robert Phoenix. Banging the drum, that's what we're doing. Banging the drum to the sun, whose obsidian glare will stare down upon us, if briefly, reflecting the dark, unrealized, unaspected natures of our hearts. Can we afford to embrace and love the shadow that lies within the very cracks of our existence? That's what it's about. And here we are. Here we are, boys and girls. This is the day of the days, the day of the day of the day of the day of the days. And what a day it shall be, whatever it shall be. Do you remember back in the day when the great comet Kohoutek was arriving, was coming to Earth? Do you remember Halley's Comet? Man, Halley's Comet was kind of a big deal. It was like, wow, Halley's Comet, it's here. It's here. It comes every, 84 years, something like that. Halley's Comet, and it showed up. It was kind of hard to see at times. Kohoutek just had a kind of a mystical name, didn't it? It sounded like a god. Kohoutek. Bow down before Kohoutek. It was really nothing. I remember getting up early, though, one morning when Kohoutek was here. And really early, walking to school. I lived about, I don't know, a mile and a half from school, something like that, 2 miles. And I walked to school one day so I could catch a glimpse of Kohoutek. And I did. I saw Kohoutek in the early morning sky. I saw Halley's Comet one night when I was in Mount Shasta, and I was in a sweat lodge. It was a very, very moving, very, very spiritual sweat lodge. Let me tell you, man. I used to go to these sweat lodges up in Mount Shasta, and there was this woman named Aida Hinojosa. She was the neatest lady. Let me tell you, she was fantastic. I loved this woman. She had been a Latin American studies teacher at a junior college in Northern California. And she started reading Carlos Castaneda. So she got into the shamanic path. I mean, she really got into it heavily. And she bought this, she left teaching and she bought this place up in Shasta. And she had the most amazing sweat lodge in this place. It was big, octagonal. As far as sweat lodges go, it was like the Hilton of sweat lodges. Because it wasn't a dirt floor. It was actually like a sauna, to be honest with you. It had benches. But it was, you had to crawl into it, or like you couldn't stand up. You had to get on your knees and you had to crawl into it like any other sweat lodge. And it actually had a wood-burning stove inside the sweat lodge. Wasn't a rock deal. So, but it was plenty hot. And we'd get in there, and she had instruments. drums and rattles and you name it. We get in there, we do these rounds, we do like 3 or 4 rounds of the Sweat Lodge, and we were totally jamming these instruments, and we'd sing and we'd chant and we'd pray, and it was incredible. It was just an amazing experience. And you come out, and that night, this one night came out, and we were on all fours, we come out of the Sweat Lodge, and there it is, in the eastern horizon. It was Halley's Comet right there in front of us. Kind of a neat thing. Well, here we are. It's the total solar eclipse. There's a lot going on out there. You know, a lot happened between Friday and today. I didn't do last night's show. I apologize. You know, I'm not sure how much more I have to say about the eclipse. I felt like I was in some level of redundancy, but I did manage to post something up on my website, which is pretty interesting, to be honest with you. I should go there just to give you a rundown, and maybe I'll do that before the show is over, about some of the events that have happened on the 21st of August. The 21st of August is a very revolutionary day. The energy is incredibly revolutionary. Maybe I'll go over some of those events. But anyway, since we talked last on Friday, we had Steve Bannon, which happened on Friday. Now, he had given his notice on the 7th of August, and it kicked in on Friday, which was his last day, and that's when most of us officially found out. Unofficially, it was kind of in the air on Wednesday. So Bannon is gone, and liberal progressive America, the left, Antifa, all the Soros factions, they're dancing. They're dancing. Dancing with glee and joy. Because Steve Bannon, the Nazi man is gone. Henry Macau brought up a really interesting point. If you haven't found Henry's site, I recommend it. You won't agree with everything there. I don't agree with everything. I don't agree with everything that I read with certain authors. And I know a lot of people don't agree with everything I say, and that's okay. And they still listen, and that's great. There's still something inside here that they can kind of wade through and get to, which is good. Same thing with Henry. I don't agree with everything, but there are things I do agree with. Anyway, he put in one of his tweets, I follow him on Twitter, he said, how can Steve Bannon be a nationalist when he's a Zionist? And that's true. Steve Bannon is a Zionist. He's a total Zionist. But anyway, Bannon is gone now, and he says that he's going to go on the warpath, and he's going to fight for Trump. I don't know if he'll fight for Trump or he'll fight against Trump, to be quite honest with you, because astrologically they're opposite signs, which I always thought was going to be a challenge for Trump with Bannon, even though Trump does have that Sagittarian moon, and Bannon's sun is kind of around Trump's moon. I don't think it's exactly conjunct, but it's not far. So there is some simpatico. And with the Sagittarian moon, you know, Trump wants to be authentic. Believe it or not, I don't care if you hate him, he wants to be authentic. And he's got that south node right on his moon. So he's got the north node on his sun. Trump was born on Eclipse. So this day should be easy peasy for Trump, since he's an eclipser. So Bannon is out, and it's going to be interesting to see what happens now. He's got the keys back to Breitbart. He is funded in part by a billionaire family, the Mercers, out of Florida. Robert Mercer and Rebecca Mercer. And so he's got a deep war chest. And the Mercers had some positions inside the Trump administration. I don't know if they do anymore. But it's going to be interesting to see what happens. My microphone. Hold on a second. I apologize for this. So we're in a civil war, folks. I don't know if you have figured that out yet or not, but we're in a civil war, and we're in a civil war, and we are on the fringe of a race war as well. There have been travel advisories for people that have been given out. Apparently the NAACP has given out a travel advisor for people in Missouri over the course of the next week, and they expect there to be violence erupting in and around Missouri, perhaps in places like Ferguson, St. Louis. But the travel advisory is out, and I've been getting emails from people saying that they are getting much tighter at the borders, checking people with their IDs and so on and so forth. So this is perhaps a prelude to what might be coming. Now keep in mind that the three most powerful people inside of the Trump administration at this point are the three generals, Kelly, Mattis, and McMaster. And they're basically now running the show. Apparently Jared Kushner is next to go. He's next to be on his way out. So Secret Agent 666 is going to have to perform his messianic Antichrist duties on his own and outside of the White House itself. Trump, it appears, is being more and more isolated from the people that were instrumental in getting him into the White House, which means he is pretty compromised at this point. And the tea leaves are that he's going to be given more of a pass with the mainstream media as time goes on here. But I find that hard to believe, because the left and the MSM and Soros and the gang are in a full court press, using the invective of Nazis and white hate and it's the Klan. It's all being completely staged now, and it's being used to demonize people so that if you don't agree with whatever the party politique is, then you are going to be branded as a closet member of a hate group. So this is where we are, America. This is where we are. And I want to thank the educational system for dutifully preparing our young people to embrace this socially Marxist doctrine. And I'd like to thank the parents of these children who have been completely fucking derelict of duty. So congratulations, you have bred and raised your own demise. Theoretically. This thing that we're in is a long way from over. We're in a deconstruction phase, which I've been talking about for a long time. And it's going to be interesting to see how we move through it and what the outcome is. And there are some serious outcomes. There's some very, very serious outcomes. I would say that the most benign outcome is that Trump gets on his knees and does everything that his globalist generals and the compromised globalist Congress and the Senate tell him to do, appeases everybody, and we get nothing out of his presidency, and it's basically Obama 3.0, the third term 3.0, right? That's probably, in some ways, from a lack of social disruption, that's probably the best scenario. If you want a lack of social disruption. But I guarantee you, with those three generals in the White House, we may have a lack of social disruption here, but I guarantee you, on these war fronts, whether it's North Korea or the surge of troops that McMaster has told Trump that he's going to do. Trump wanted to bring in, I think, something along the lines of 4,500 more troops into Afghanistan. McMaster, double it and more. Mr. President, I was thinking more like 9,000. And so Trump has had the whole weekend to think about how he's going to tell the American people that we're going to be sending 10,000 more troops to Afghanistan. And this, of course, to protect the poppy fields. Because we all know that we need those opioids. Those opioids are big business, man. Big business. And we know the government has been involved in the drug trade for a very long time. Long time. In fact, it was at the heart of the Vietnam War, taking over the heroin trade, the Burmese heroin trade, from the French. That's what the Vietnam War was mostly about. If you haven't studied alternative history, I strongly recommend you do, and you look at that period, and you'll see exactly what I'm talking about. There were body bags that would come back from Vietnam, and those body bags would be stuffed with heroin. And that heroin would find its way into the inner cities of America, where it would then begin to destroy black families all across the nation, obliterating a generation of young black men, from the attrition rate of the Vietnam War itself to the attrition rate of the inner cities. Meanwhile, the Great Society and the war on poverty had created the welfare Mac Daddy, so that the absent men, either due to dying in the name of their country, dying at the hands of drugs, or dying at the hands of the industrial prison complex, meaning that they would be incarcerated for long periods of time. Their women would be left behind, and of course they would be forced to take on subsidies from the government. And the welfare state became the de facto parent in urban America. The Vietnam War was terrible because it devastated black America. The families and the potential for families that ensued, and you can look at the rates of, I think it was 72% of, I did this one time as a statistic on Guy. I did a show on Guy and I threw this statistic out there, that it was like pre-1965 that 70% of black America had both a mother and a father, and then like after 1975, or where we are now, I think where we are now it's like 32% or something like that. It's like completely flipped. I mean, that's huge. Those numbers are huge, and it has a devastating impact on the young people that are raised as a result of that. So we can move forward. We want to look at the drug trade, and we can get into what happened down in South America, Central America, during the time that Bush was president, Reagan was president, Clinton was president, Mena, Arkansas, the CIA, cocaine, drug trade. Here we go. Absolutely. And here we are again, present time, with Afghanistan and the poppies. Let's get 10,000 more troops over there so we can lock that shit down. So Trump's going to talk about that. I think he's going to Phoenix. I think that Phoenix trip is still planned, if I'm not mistaken. That's for tomorrow. Oy, 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 oy. Phoenix, 33rd degree parallel. The symbolism of the bird itself, the death and the rebirth. What is the death and the rebirth signifying at this point in time? We shall see as the days and weeks move on. Remember, the eclipse energy lasts upwards between 1.5 to almost 3 weeks after the eclipse itself. So even though the eclipse is happening today, we are not out of it or through it. The energy still lingers. And it's on. It is on like Donkey Kong. Last night I was getting ready to do the show. I just kind of finished my piece, which is up on the website. And I get into the history of the Black Sun, the cult of the Black Sun. And I got a disturbing email on the domestic side. And it was like one of those things where you're like, it's like, I just had to sit with it. I just couldn't. And I'm like, can I get over the top here? Can I just talk about this? Can I get on air and do my thing and just talk over it? And I thought to myself, you know what? I have said so much about this eclipse already. I've covered just about every single angle possible of the eclipse. I can't, it's like I'm not sure how much more I have to say, and quite frankly, I just want to think about and deal with what just came across my lap. So I apologize for not showing up last night. That's what happened, and I don't want to get into any further details, but that's it. That's where we are. So in North Korea, South Korea rather, on the border of North Korea, there are 75,000 troops, including South Koreans and Americans that are playing war games. And they're playing war games on the eclipse. How about that? Now remember, the sun is conjuncting Donald Trump's ascendant. The sun is conjuncting his natal Mars, conjunct his ascendant. This is considerably intense, and it could be a very big deal, especially when it relates to something like war and Mars and the military. And who knows what Kim Jong-un is going to do? Who knows what we're going to do during a simulated war game? You know what happens during simulations, don't you? Things like 9/11, because there were like 6 separate simulations going on that day, and which meant there was a lot of confusion. Well, a ton of confusion at that time when 9/11 went down. So now we've got that going on over there on the border of North and South Korea. We had another ship in the South Pacific Theater run into, I guess it might have been some kind of an oil rig or oil derrick. It's the USS John McCain, named after John McCain's father and grandfather, who were admirals in the U.S. Navy. And apparently there are people that are dead, there are people that are sailors that are missing. This is like the 3rd or 4th mishap. Maybe this is Neptune retrograde. I don't know, but it's very ironic that it's named the John McCain, isn't it? Maybe this is a message to McCain. Man, when he had that brain tumor, I thought, God, this is great. I'm sorry, that's a lot of schadenfreude, I know. But I can't stand the guy. I'm human, what can I say? I haven't risen above yet to that degree where, he doesn't know what he's doing. Please forgive him. No, he's an asshole. And he's a phony, to boot. He did such a disservice to the American people when he ran for president. Such a joke. He's a maverick! John McCain's no maverick. He's a maverick! Right. He just laid down. He laid down like a dog with fleas for Barack Obama. That was part of the deal. And he brought in nutty Sarah Palin. Nutty Sarah Palin to be his running mate. Bill Kristol brought him in. Or brought her in. Maverick. No maverick. So we've got that going on. We've got all those troops massed at the North Korean, South Korean border. We've got America on fire with anti-fascism. Hey, it's cool to be anti-fascist. It's cool. It gets back to that thing I was talking about on Friday, which is the sense of vindication. We had been primed with probably maybe about a decade's worth of revenge porn. If you think about some of the garbage that Quentin Tarantino has put out, like Inglourious Bastards and Django Unchained, sorry, it's just revenge porn. It's all it is. And so we've been inundated with revenge porn for probably about the last decade at the cinema. So people can get fired up. You know, they have this kind of moral justification. They can take a baseball bat to somebody because they think that they might be a Nazi, that they think that they might be right. In fact, they don't even think, they just know. There's a knowingness now. You're a racist. You're a Nazi. I'm coming at you. Have you seen the video? There's a video of some stuff that went down in Boston over the weekend. Of course, Antifa and Black Lives Matter was out there. And there's this one black chick. She's screaming at the cops. And the cop had just like taken this guy and kind of, you know, they roughed him up a little bit, but they didn't like crack his head open or anything. They got him in a headlock and they gave him kind of a really hard noogie. Really hard noogie. And then they set him free, right? And this black chick is screaming. It's like, bitch, don't you know whose side you're supposed to be on? You're supposed to be on our side. I mean, it's amazing. I mean, the audacity. The audacity. And I don't care if it was a man or a woman. I don't care what the skin tone was. I don't care. It's audacious. It's audacious because in the brief historical context, her community, right, engaged in this conflict with the police and how their lives matter. And they have, in their marches, escalated the rhetoric and the violence towards the police. Piggy in a blanket, watch them fry, or whatever they say, right? So here's all this kind of social invective coming from that side. It's basically saying, you motherfuckers got to burn, a good cop is a dead cop. I mean, all that stuff, right? And then in the heat of the battle, bitch, don't you know you're supposed to be on our side? Oh my God, it's like, this is crazy. This is the insanity of the world that we're living in. It is wild out there. And you just sit back and go, what is going on here? Well, people are going mad. That's what's going on. People are losing their shit. That's it. They're losing their shit, and people are angry and they're mad. And I had this moment. I have these checkout moments now. I had this moment at Central Market yesterday, and I walked up to the counter, and there was this young woman, and she had long hair on one side and shaved hair on the other. Well, you know, it wasn't like it was ugly. It was, you know, fairly stylish in some ways, right? What do they call it? The halp or the talp or whatever it is. It's a Islamic hairstyle, believe it or not. Anyway, but it was long. It was kind of, you know, more than just kind of this traditional hairstyle. Anyway, I get into the line and she looks at me. I can tell she's sizing me up. Right, I'm 6'3". I've got what they call the Van Dyke, you know, with the mustache and the goatee. And I can tell she's sizing me up. She asked me with a very demure voice, like she has to kind of do it as part of her job description. But I can tell she's not really wanting to engage with me because I might just be one of those Nazi fascists. So she asked me, how are you today? And one of my favorite retorts to that is peachy and peachy. because not a lot of people say peachy. And it actually makes you happy, believe it or not. Because when you're not feeling well, or you're, you're in kind of a bad mood, when you say peachy, it changes your energy. Try it sometime. I highly recommend it. Highly recommend it. How are you? Oh, I'm peachy. And then all of a sudden you're kind of peachy. In that moment, it just shifts everything. Because who doesn't like a nice peach, right? But the energy was kind of weird, you know? It was strange. It was like she's trying to figure me out. It's like, is this guy a threat? Is he going to reach across the counter and choke me? Or some bratwurst down my throat? I mean, it was just weird, you know? Yeah, and I can read energy, trust me. I can read energy. I've been doing it for years. I can fill the spaces in between. That's the world we're living in now. And I swear to God, this is, you know, you don't want to live in fear, but you better have your eyes on a swivel. If you're living in an urban area, you better have your head on a swivel, because it is open season now. I hate to say it, but it is open season. So you better take that to the bank and be very aware of your surroundings and who's around you, especially if you are by yourself. I'm not a fear monger. I'm just letting you know. Okay? This is where we are right now. And I don't know where it's going to go. It could go into the police state model, because we've got 3 generals who are running the show and would be more than happy to sort of seal off the borders of various states. How about that? That's a possibility. If shit gets out of control too much, they'll shut down the borders. And guess what they'll do after that? They'll shut down the cities. They'll have perimeters around cities. And this is what will happen. And it will happen faster than you can comprehend it. It won't be gradual. If there is a massive change, or if there's a change, it will happen very quickly. It will not happen over a period of 2 or 3 months. It'll happen over a period of 5 to 7 days. And we'll be living in a very different country. And I'm not here to spread fear. That's not what I'm here to do, but I'm here to have you understand the potential scenarios as they currently exist. And so that's one of the other things. Right? First it was they allow Trump to do his thing. He becomes the version of Obama 3.0, and we continue to kind of limp along as a country, moving more towards the globalist model without a peep. If there is more escalated violence, if there is the putsch, the Purple Revolution, the 100th year anniversary of the Bolshevik Revolution from 2017 going back to 1917, and the Trumps are the new Romanovs, that's a different story. And it's a very unpredictable story, to be quite honest with you, because we don't know how the deplorables or how the flyovers or how people like they are here in Texas will react to something like that. Texas being one of the more heavily armed states in the Union. Trust me on this. Texas would be a very interesting issue or challenge for the powers that be. And not just because of the people that are here that are armed, but there are also a lot of servicemen that are here. And servicemen that may be more aligned to the state than they are to the actual regime change. That's quite possible. I don't know, maybe the armed services have accounted for that and shipped most of the Texans out of the state and brought other people in. That's, you know, they were smart, that's what they would do. And they're smart. Make no mistake about it, these people think these things through. They have plenty of time and money and resources on their hands, so if they wanted to explore something like this, boy, they'd like to do that. That's why they went to war college, or, you know what I mean? So they could map all this stuff out. So that's a possible scenario. And if that happens, we could be in a prolonged conflict. And this is what John Teeter, the time traveler, of course, talked about. He talked about this type of conflict. A civil war. And it could also, again, be not just a civil war, but also the fringe of a race war, which would be catastrophic, in my opinion, and terrible. Because you have the Antifa, which seems to be mostly on the pasty white side. And then you have sort of the BLM, socially conscious, woke side, and they could theoretically join forces. And then you have the communists that are inserted, the communist cells that are all over the country. And then you have, of course, foreign nationals who are here and have been here for a long time. You know, these would be sleeper cells, Chinese sleeper cells, Russian sleeper cells, Albanian sleeper cells. You bet your ass they're here. And they've integrated, and they know the language, and they're just waiting for the go switch. Trust me, they're here. And who knows what role they'll play. You know, wearing American uniforms, speaking, you know, very clear American English, telling people what to do, right? It's all very possible. I mean, these are, I'm just opening up, I'm expanding the scenario so you understand what the possibilities might be if we are continuing to go down this path. Because I don't think they can turn the faucet off now. I think it's been opened up. Now, what's interesting is that, you know, you can go to the government's website and you can petition. You can throw a petition out there. You get 100,000 signatures, and based on this agreement, the government has to respond to the petition. Well, within less than 72 hours, 100,000 signatures were collected, and they are demanding that the president recognize Antifa as a terrorist organization. Now, whether or not that will happen is a whole other deal. But at the very least, it shows people are proactive. People woke up. People heard the trumpet, the trumpets. It was the clarion call to awaken, and people are waking up, and they're awakening into a very, very cold reality, right? That's what they're waking up into, because they realize that they're alone. This is the biggest thing, right? You realize you're alone, because there's nobody out there that's got your back or got your side. It's not in the government. You're alone. And that's a big deal. It's very empowering in some ways, you know? It's very empowering. I think one of the most amazing things that can happen is that you can go through a number of events and you get to this point where you're kind of untouchable. You know, if things stack up, they just keep stacking and stacking and stacking, and you just kind of, you know, move through them and move through them and move through them and move through them. And it's like, well, what's left, right? What else can they take? What else can they take? And all of a sudden, you get to this point where you're kind of impervious to shit. And that's a really powerful place to be. It's not quite like the cremation of care, where these people are engaged in these ritualized acts where they literally kill and figuratively kill their conscience. This is something different. This is like being tempered by fire. And then all of a sudden your blade gets really sharp, and you know, things just don't touch you. I mean, that's really the place to be in a lot of ways. And I'm not advocating that people go through a ton of shit to get there, but sometimes it happens. You begin to shed your dependencies, whatever they are, being liked, being accepted, theoretically, quote unquote, being loved. All those things begin to fall by the wayside, and they're very liberating. Very, very liberating. And you can begin to do certain things based on the shedding of those dependencies. because they're dependencies. They were all connected to the outside world. Well, we had two great comedians leave us, Jerry Lewis and Dick Gregory. Dick Gregory had a very interesting life. He was first of all, he was really into health. Gregory was kind of a fruitarian. I used to see him at Whole Life Expos, right? He'd be selling his Bahamian diet. So he was definitely kind of a fruitarian, and he was an interesting character, very smart. He was a funny comedian. He was socially switched on and conscious, and I didn't agree with everything that Dick Gregory talked about, but I certainly agreed with his intellectual, his voracious kind of intellectual diet, right? I mean, Dick Gregory was into the truth. And I think his best moment when he was on that panel with Tavis Smiley and all those kind of black leaders and entertainers, and he started busting out about chemtrails. It's like, wow, that's great, Dick. That's awesome. We need more of that. And of course, Prince heard that. And then Prince had an interview with Tavis Smiley, and Prince started talking about chemtrails. And who knows, that might have been the beginning of the end for Prince. By the way, speaking of which, anybody seen Kanye lately? Remember when we didn't see Kanye? There wasn't a moment where we weren't having a Kanye moment. And he was everywhere. He was on tour. He had his fashion show. He was with Kim. He was hitting his head on a sign. That was a sign, wasn't it? He hit his head on that sign. It was a caution sign. I think that's what it was. And there wasn't a moment where we didn't see Kanye. Now where's Kanye? He's sitting at home and somebody's wiping the drool off of his face. That's where Kanye is. One of his paid assistants is changing his clothes right now for him. Well, there's a big message there, isn't there? Pull him off the stage. Actually, pull him out of his hotel room and send him away. Jerry Lewis died too. Jerry Lewis was an odd guy. He was an odd dude, but he was interesting in his own right, and certainly he was funny. I mean, all the different voices, and I mean, you can see Jim Carrey and Jerry Lewis. Am I right? Jim Carrey became like our generational version of Jerry Lewis. Physical comedy and all the different characters and all the different faces, all the different voices. Well, Jerry Lewis is gone too. I used to watch the muscular dystrophy telethon when I was a kid. I loved it. Is that weird? I would stay up till like 3 in the morning watching that thing. Anyway, go check out my new post on my website. I'm not going to read any of it because I want you to go there and read it. I want you to go there. It's actually pretty good, I have to say. It talks about the events like today. That there's come some amazing events, revolutionary events that occurred on this day, August 21st, in history, and actually get into Elias Lonsdale's inner degrees, and you can read about the inner degree of 29 Leo, which is the degree after 28 Leo, because we read up, right? When it comes to the symbols and the degrees. Well, here we are. I might come back on to YouTube right around the time of the eclipse and do a live stream. I have to sort something out with an appointment. If I can do that, I might come back on at around it's about 12:30 our time here in Austin, or 12:15. I might come back on at just 12 noon and do a live stream on the eclipse. So stay tuned. I'll let you guys know over on Facebook and on Twitter. And until then, use your head to discern what's real, your heart to stay on what's possible, on this very intense and potentially important day of days. I'm Robert Phoenix, and here's our little outro music. And look for me over on YouTube right around noon if I can sort some stuff out. Okay, take care.